Hi, I'm Dana Fykerud. I live in Bend, Oregon, new filmmaker. I just completed my first film entitled Red Wine Drive. It's a compassion-driven human narrative film. It's set in 1969. It's a young nurse decided to seek out her brother, and um, he was taken away from her at a young age. So she decided to become a nurse and find him at an institution that she believes that he might be at. So she's been on this journey for a long time, and she finally thinks she might have found the clues to what happened to him.
Yeah.
So,
I just got to say, from the moment that I heard and read the premise, and then I watched through the film, I was very, very invested in the project. And the first thing that struck out most to me was just how directly involved you were with this project, especially from everything that you were involved with of the writing the script, the directing, the production, all of that, and all of that huge investment. And then based off of, at least from what you described, was wanting to kind of circumvent the usual process for acting and the audition process of just making your own stuff and putting yourself in it. That I think that's super commendable. And that kind of leads me into, what was your kind of first points of inspiration or motivation for beginning to work on this project, and why you wanted to go in the direction you did?
um, like I stated in my bio, I decided to. I was getting frustrated with the audition process. And I thought, well, if I just write my own stuff and put myself in it, and at least I would, be working. And so I was very naive in the fact I thought that perhaps there would be a director that would come in and help me direct and do all these things. And that just wasn't the reality. And so I just jumped in and did it all myself just because I think that's what indie filmmaking is.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan on being in it. I was hoping just to direct it, be behind the scenes, and I ended up doing absolutely everything. So, big shock. It was a big shock to me, but I kind of just kept on going. And as far as the storyline, some of it has a little truth. My mother-in-law was a nurse in the '60s, and that story, the story of Daniel, was she saw something similar happen. So I took that story because I was moved by that, and just expanded the storyline from there.
Yeah, I'm really invested in the exploration that the film does of these topics, and that's something that's not really represented too often, especially if it's something that, uh, just based off of course, the film is set in Oregon, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes, and that just also kind of showing off too, like, at least for our case for the film festival, of with it being made in Oregon and set in Oregon, that nature of the fact that, of course, with the history of mental institutions and the sorts of things that they did, especially in the 60s and 70s, and what that looked like, of approaching this topic definitely must have been interesting on how you approached it. And that leads me into one of the things I really liked about the film was that it is a period piece. So I was curious about what your methods were for sort of setting the scene, making sure that everything felt accurate as much as possible. And I know that, of course, given the constraints of indie filmmaking and all of the constraints within that, how did you go about making this feel like the decade it was in?
Well, I didn't plan that, and if I, as a new screenwriter, brand new, I didn't realize the implications and what that would mean to make a period piece. I didn't think about it. Once I got into it, I realized, oh my gosh, I have to have cars,
Yeah,
and the place has to look authentic. And
continuity with
so
a
that was,
capital C.
yes, that was very challenging. So I just did my best and got really resourceful. I was born in the '70s, so I feel like I had a little bit of, I knew kind of what some of those cultures were like. I had, friends who were in that kind of field, so I had heard stories about that. just the way they were treated, nurses were treated in that time period. But what I didn't also expect after I started doing some more research before writing the script, I, I think the thing that shocked me the most is how some of these things are still being done today. So, I was kind of naive in that way. I thought we had moved a little bit further down the path of, some of these cultures and, some of these patients being treated the way they were. Not much has changed. So I thought that was really eye opening, and why we make films, because you learn something. So that was one thing I learned. So
And also leading into that is a big part of this film is that it's a very feminist film. It's very women centric. It's showing all the different perspectives, and uh, I liked to pay attention throughout the film of all the interweaving of the different narratives and the characters and as they were interacting. Uh, did you have any thoughts on how you wanted to implement that and some of the goals that you had for the representation you were pursuing in the story?
I didn't set out with any big goal or agenda. Um, with that, and I think that's just lack of experience. I would do it differently, a couple things differently that way. But I made this also in hopes of it being like a series. So I feel like it. You have all. It was very. I'm a big fan of Downton Abbey, so I unfolded it in that way. Everything kind of unfolds very naturally. There's some conflict, but it gets resolved. It's very, things, they just move at such a nice pace. And I really try to, replicate that and kind of keep that vibe, because there's many storylines. Dawn doesn't have to be the main lead. She doesn't have to be the star of the show all the time. There's other storylines that you could actually do. So that's kind of, I guess that's a little bit of an agenda and thought I had, but yeah. So that kind
Discovery
of,
is a very big process of
yes,
writing of any kind, and that some people have it all planned out. Some people also just try to get to moments and see what springs up and blossoms from that. And I totally
yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
I do think that approach is well interesting, and sort of similarly, with this being your first big filmmaking project, what were some of the big things that working on this film helped you learn or develop or grow as not just a performer but filmmaker and all the different facets of creating art and creating a story?
I think it showed me that, just to see the bigger picture, and not, meaning not get caught up. I mean, you need to be detail oriented, and I'm fairly detail oriented. I'm married to a pilot, so we're a nice balance.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think just seeing the bigger picture, not getting tripped up on the details, not doing 50 takes of something. I just never did. Every actor always got out on time. Never were we late. I didn't keep anybody overnight past 7 p.m.
Didn't pull a
I
Stanley Kubrick.
yeah, no, yeah. I did not do that. I think if I'm a director, how do I say that? I'm an actor's director. Like I just don't want to. I don't take advantage of people. It's just not right. And I didn't do this in a SAG form, so I really wanted to make sure I just kept, everything on time, and just tried to see the bigger picture of it all. And then when you start getting confidence in that, and you see that things are working and people are happy on your set, it just kind of, I think that's how we were able to accomplish what we were able to accomplish without having the budget. I mean, most of the scenes, I mean, they look like we were in a mental institution, and I got lucky with that. So yeah, I think things kind of unfolded naturally, and that was nice.
Yes, rolling with the serendipity is very, very important.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
kind of in that same note, how do you think this film will influence any potential future projects you intend to work on?
Oh yeah, like, because yeah, a lot. The casting is the most important. Um, and I did without having the experience. I feel like I did a really good job with that, and so that saved me. I would spend more time. I had many DPs along the way, and I eventually found, the one, the guy who stuck with me throughout the thing, because people's lives change, and they move on to other jobs that are, pay more, and so that was, I would definitely take more time just finding somebody who can complete the project, so it's a little more seamless. So those kind of technical details I would do a little differently. I wouldn't um I don't think I'd cast myself in it. I think it would that was a lot to take, because there was one scene in particular I remember vividly, that I was behind my DP. We were filming, it was probably the most kind of, the big scene where he was taken away. And I just whispered into my DP's ear, I'm like, I'm supposed to be in this scene. But I was so preoccupied with everything. He's like, "We're not refilming it, Dana. Just you're out of the scene." I'm like, "That's totally fine."
Yep.
But
It is
that's
one of those
just,
things.
yes, that was a live and learn thing, and that was really hard. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I would do that again, but we'll see.
Well, it's just something that happens at in any newer endeavor within the
Yes,
artistic process, or just any endeavor, whether it's artistic or not. There's some things that you just moments that you don't catch that you can only really gather from experience.
yes,
And
yep.
I guess a final thought is if there's one or two things, or just a fundamental idea, or anything that you would want people who watch this film to take away from it, what would that be?
Just to trust yourself, your instincts, to see the movie and just kind of feel inspired that good always wins in the end. And there was it's just love endures. Um, and as a director and doing something new, um, that you've never done before or don't have that experience, I would just say do it anyway and just hang in there and just complete the project, even though you don't have the experience, you don't have the resume, you certainly don't have the money to do what you really want to do, but just do it anyways, because things will they have a way of working out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The quote that I always remember when I try to approach some of my own projects, I can't remember who it's attributed to. I have to go and make sure I can find that again. Is don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. So
Okay, that's pretty much all that we'll have for the Q&A. Thank you so much, Dana. Uh,
yes.
but for that, of course, for anything else with the film, of course, thank you so much for submitting, and that it's really nice that we were able to have your film selected and be part of our festival.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.
Of course.